so that if you'd like to see the transcript, you can do that as well. So now I have some additional colleagues I would love to introduce you to. We'll start with Alexa, who is co-hosting this webinar with me. Alexa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Alexa Salvador. I'm a senior admission counselor here at GU. I work with students in Southern California, basically the greater LA area, so Ventura down through Orange County, as well as Arizona. And I'm so excited to help you throughout this process and be able to present to you tonight.
Thank you, Alexa. All right, now I'd like you to meet my colleague Becky and my colleague Priya. Becky, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. My name is Becky. I'm a senior admission counselor here at Gonzaga. I primarily work with students in Western Washington, so I have King County and all the counties north up to the Canadian border. I also work with students from the Dakotas and Texas. So Priya and I will be in the Q&A function tonight. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A as opposed to the chat, just so Priya and I can very seamlessly answer all your questions.
Thanks, Becky. And now Priya, please.
What's up, y'all? My name is Priya. I am also an admission counselor at Gonzaga, and I work with students from San Diego, Alaska, Nevada, as well as like the Northeast coast. So if y'all are from there, I saw the Alaska, so whoop whoop. I'm your counselor. But yeah, definitely feel free to contact me if y'all are from any of those states. We'd love to help you, but yes.
Awesome. So to get us started with this evening, we would love to know where you are all at with the application process. So I'm going to launch a poll here to see how many of you have started your Gonzaga application yet. These numbers are going pretty back and forth, which is exciting. Okay, we're still waiting on a few more to answer. So I'll give it about another minute to get those started. And it's pretty tight actually. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this poll and share the results. So as you can see, about 50-ish% of you have started your application and some of you have not. The good news is you have plenty of time for those of you that have not yet started, and hopefully this webinar is going to be informative. And for those of you that have started your application, maybe even submitted it already, you're maybe a little bit less stressed. And the whole point of this webinar is to decrease any anxiety you all might be feeling. So congratulations on either getting it started or at least thinking about getting it started.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexa. Congrats for everybody on whatever stage you are in with your application. And thanks again for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see some of the slides that we have prepared for you. And again, please use that Q&A function when you have questions so that my colleagues can answer questions as we go. So welcome again to the webinar. We know that the college application process can be very stressful. So it's our hope tonight to relieve some of that stress. Many times we can be most stressed when there are processes that are unknown or you have no control over them. So hopefully tonight we'll give you some insight into our process, as well as identify some of the parts of the application that you still have some control over right now. We're going to take you through and talk about the common application. That's what we use at Gonzaga for both our domestic and our international first-year students. This is an application that's accepted by many universities, so it decreases the amount of forms that you have to fill out for each school. For those of you in the Spokane and the Seattle and Tacoma areas who are applying for the Act 6 Leadership Scholarship, you too will use the common application, and then you select Act 6 from the school dropdown on the school selections page. Then we will use your Act 6 common application as your application for admission. Act 6 applicants must apply by November 30th for the scholarship, and all other common application applicants have a December 1st deadline. Not much difference between those two deadlines, but December 1st would be the date. The cost for the common application is $50. The Act 6 application is free because it is also a scholarship application. For those in need of an application waiver for the common application, there are a few options. The common application has a box that you can check where you request a fee waiver for economic reasons, and your high school counselor will confirm it. Additionally, Gonzaga alumni have the ability to submit waivers on your behalf through the alumni page of the GU website. It's under benefits is what it's called there. We never want the inability to be able to pay for the application to be a barrier to applying to Gonzaga. So please contact the Office of Admission if you need any assistance. Now I'm gonna pass this off to Alexis, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I'm just gonna start with the way we review applications, which is holistically. So we will look at 5 main factors for most of you, 6 if you submit your test score and want us to use it. We are test optional, which I'll talk about, or we will talk about a little bit more in a moment. But the first of the 5 factors that we're going to talk about tonight is grades and grade trends. We look at a student's GPA. We also consider their grade trends, so grades going up or down or remaining the same, and the circumstances that may have led to that trend, including challenges throughout the pandemic. The middle 50% of our students enrolling at Gonzaga are between a 3.53 and a 3.9 unweighted GPA. This means that 25% had a GPA below a 3.53 and 25% of them had a GPA above a 3.9 on an unweighted scale. We use unweighted GPA so that all students are on the same 4.0 scale, while at the same time, we also look at curriculum separately and give it considerable weight as well. All students applying to Gonzaga should have a standard college prep curriculum. By college prep, we mean that students should have 4 years of English, 3 to 4 years of math, 3 years of a social science, 2 to 3 years of the same foreign language, including American Sign Language, and 3 to 4 years of science. I think I said that one already. Nope, I didn't. Perfect. We know that more challenging classes can make for students who are better prepared for college. And so we encourage you to take challenging courses that are available to you and still allow for balance in your life. In addition to preparing students for college, and therefore factoring into the application and merit scholarship, a student can also receive credits for the classes that they've been taking, whether that be through a test requirement or through the college classes that are equivalent to ones offered at Gonzaga. We'll add a link in the chat showing our AP, IB, Cambridge, and Running Start or college and the high school policies and equivalencies. Please note that if you do have college credit from college courses while you took in high school or AP, IB, or Cambridge tests, you are still considered a first-year student with credit, not a transfer student. So you may have enough credits to have junior standing in college, but you'll need to follow all the deadlines for first-year students, so December 1 for admission. You're also eligible for our first-year scholarships for all 4 years, not transfer one. So it's really the best of both worlds.
So if you are interested in majoring in engineering or nursing, those are direct entry programs. So for both, you need to list your interest in nursing or engineering on the application itself. And that interest can be listed as undeclared engineering. You don't have to know the exact type. Engineering applicants, we have a whole School of Engineering and Applied Science. So there's a lot of space. What we're assessing is your extra is your preparation for engineering. So we'll look more closely at your curriculum and your grades, especially in STEM classes. We strongly recommend physics at some point in high school and calculus by the end of your senior year. If we feel that you've shown potential but don't have those recommended classes, we may admit you into engineering anyway if you show strong preparation, or admit you into pre-engineering, which means that you are admitted into the university, and after successfully taking some math and/or science classes, you will progress into engineering studies. For nursing applicants, we have a fairly small program, so this is our most competitive major. The first thing we look at and look for is 4 years of math and science in your high school curriculum. We prefer biology and chemistry and other life science labs and courses such as anatomy and physiology, but other sciences are fine too. It's helpful to have some experience shadowing or volunteering in health settings, but we also recognize that this currently is not possible in all areas. Students may only enter the nursing program as a first-year student, since this is a cohort model program with the students taking their classes and clinicals together. So it's not possible to transfer into the program. With the exception of homeschooled students, Gonzaga is test optional for admission for all majors, including nursing and engineering, and all scholarships and special programs, such as the honors program. In other words, students applying without a test will have access and the same access to everything that students applying with test scores will have. When a student applies without a test score, we will place more emphasis on evaluation of grades and curriculum and the writing throughout the application. If you do have a test score already and you're wondering whether or not to submit it, here are the middle 50% for the test scores in our incoming class. And you see those on your screen, and I'll also read them aloud. So 1250 to 1390 for the SAT and 28 to 32 for the ACT. You are welcome to discuss your specific situation with your admission counselor. But in general, if you already have a really strong curriculum and GPA, you would also then have to have a very high test score at the top or above our middle 50 to have the test score make a difference in your application. Homeschooled students who will have more than 30 semester or 45 quarter credits of transferable credit from a college or a community college at the time of the application do not need to submit a test score, though those who have less college credit are required to do so. For all applicants, on our Gonzaga Questions page, that part of the common application, you will be asked to mark whether or not you want to have your SAT or your ACT count as a part of your application. If you mark no, then we won't use your score, even if you sent it to us previously. If you mark yes, then we will use your score and we will keep trying to contact you if we don't have your test score, if it's missing from your application at the time that you apply. If you have taken the same test more than once, we do super score your total score by taking the best score from each subsection, such as math and evidence-based reading and writing on the SAT. And we would add those together so that if you are using your scores, it's really a good idea to send us all of the scores that you've taken so that we can determine which are the highest ones from the subsections and give you the highest possible subtotal or the highest possible total. Please do be in communication with your admission counselor if you change your mind about using your scores or not. And if we haven't finished our evaluation process, then we will make the change for you. We expect December 28th to be the date after which we will be unable to change a student's test optional status. International students, you do still have to submit a test to show English proficiency. We'll put a link in the chat box where you can look through the options and requirements for showing English proficiency, such as an online Duolingo test. And if your scores are below our English proficiency guidelines and you don't qualify for a waiver, our Gonzaga Global program might be a good fit for you because it does provide English language support that will help you be successful as an undergraduate student at Gonzaga. If you choose to use a test score to meet the English requirement, then you will still have the option to be test optional for admission.
Another part of our holistic review is considering your commitments outside of school activities. So we are looking more for depth in an area rather than that you've done everything that's offered. Gonzaga is a very community-oriented place, and our students get very involved in campus and in the community. So we seek students who enjoy being involved, starting new clubs, serving as leaders in some capacity, and engaging in their communities. Please also note that working, volunteering, and family responsibilities are also important to list as they show responsibility, dependability, and engagement in your community. We also don't value one type of activity over another, such as sports over music or music over DECA. We are interested in a lot of talents, passions, and abilities, and everything you have to bring to our college community. We also recognize that opportunities for extracurriculars have been and may continue to be more limited right now. Both the common application and the Act 6 application have an essay that's required, and there's a short answer question on our Gonzaga Questions page. And another one will appear if you mark yourself as a nursing major. Finally, there's a section on the common application that allows you to address any hardships or issues you've had as a result of COVID, natural disasters, or other things that might be impacting your time during high school. So there's a section where you can address these dips in your grades or other academic or personnel challenges and recoveries. We do encourage you to use these sections if they apply to you, so you can give us more context for your personal situation, environment, and academic history.
Now for the essay, the common application has you pick from one essay out of 7 different prompts. And the last one is essentially make up your own question. So you have a limitless amount of options. And we encourage you to pick the question that speaks the most to you and that you can write about and write about well, and that you are excited about writing about. I also encourage you to make your topic narrow rather than really broad. For example, in writing about my passion for theater, I might say that if I'm writing really broadly, I say, I really love theater. It's really my passion. But if my topic is something more like how I grew as a result of directing elementary kids in a play, then that's a narrower topic, and I can cover that in the space allowed. It also lends itself to reflection. We want to see that you can write well, and we also want to learn more about you from the essay. So you're welcome to be creative with this, such as an essay that I read from a student who wanted to be a journalist. So she wrote her essay interviewing herself 20 years into her career. There was also the budding poet who included a poem that was tied into the essay. The best essays let us experience what you experienced as we read them. They show us that experience, they don't tell it. An example of telling would be for a student, if they were trying to write about debate, would be saying something like, I've been on the debate team for all of my high school years and I've won many tournaments. It's an intense and sometimes scary activity, but I enjoy it. But showing, and the much more adeptly written version of this could read like this. I scribbled furiously as my opponent finished her argument, making sure I could counter each point. Then, as it was my turn to speak, I pushed my anxieties aside and the usual rush of energy came over me. And I remembered, I live for debate moments like this one. Strong essays use vivid imagery and sometimes dialogue. They reflect on what the experience has meant to them, and they tie the end of the essay back to the beginning, referring again to something that opened that essay so that the reader knows that it's coming to a conclusion. Strong essays are also well proofed for errors, and I'm sure this goes without saying to this group, but they do use appropriate capitalization, punctuation, and grammar, and even in those short answer sections. I can't tell you the number of times that we've seen little i's or parents' names all in lowercase. And while we're not going to throw that student's application away, it doesn't leave the impression that you want it to leave. And overall professionalism on the application is important.
And again, as we are a community that really cares about one another, the final piece we look at is your character, as seen through a letter of recommendation from an academic subject teacher, so someone you've had in a class and not just a coach, and your secondary school report, which is filled out by your high school counselor or school office. A letter from your high school counselor is not required, though if your counselor sends one, we do add it to your file. A final option is to do an interview with a counselor, and as you can see, we highly recommend that for students with a 3.2 GPA or lower, or anyone who feels that a talk with an admission counselor may better help explain their academic interests or history and personal needs better. We are also happy to meet with students no matter what their GPA and academics show, as the more we know about you, the better we can connect you with a special opportunity at Gonzaga, such as separate application scholarships that may be a good fit for you, or different academic programs that you might not have thought about yet. We also offer interviews via phone, video chat, or in person if you are able to visit us, and you can sign up for them on our virtual Gonzaga and our Visit Gonzaga pages that we'll put in the chat. You are welcome to contact your admission counselor from your region to learn more and to answer your questions. We'll add the Find Your Counselor webpage to the chat. And if you do an interview with us, we cover your questions, individualized information on majors of interest, as well as scholarship and financial aid. Speaking of scholarships and financial aid, we will be offering a virtual information session on October 13th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time that covers scholarships and financial aid. So we hope to see you back there for that one in October. We'll also be hosting a webinar on November 17th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time called How to Build Community, where you'll be invited to meet with some of our colleagues in offices such as the Unity Multicultural Education Center, the Lincoln LGBTQ+ Resource Center, Mission and Ministry, Gonzaga Outdoors, Health and Counseling, and more, as well as some of our students to share their ZAG experiences. We'd love to share more of Gonzaga stories and resources with you and learn more about what you are seeking in your college experience.
All right, so I just stopped sharing my screen, but we really hope that this information has helped to kind of clarify our admission processes, as well as giving you a sense of what parts of the application you currently have control over. Now we will address any questions that you have left that haven't been answered in the Q&A.
Yeah, great job, Lex and Carrie. I think Priya and I were able to answer just about all of them. There were a few that kind of came up multiple times that I think would just be good to answer out loud. So just a few clarifying questions around Act 6. So it's only for students from Spokane and Seattle-Tacoma. Carrie, do you know like what geographically for Spokane that means? I know we had a student that said they live about an hour west of Spokane. I know the Seattle-Tacoma area is very large as well. I don't know if you have a specific answer for that.
Yeah, you can still you can apply using that Act 6 application that for that person who does live about an hour away. The thing is that if you do move on in the scholarship program, you will have to be able to get to campus or get to places in Spokane fairly regularly. So it's partly depends on your commitment to be able to come to campus a little bit more and come for those workshops and those next steps. And even if you're chosen as a finalist, that there would be additional transitional preparation for you before you come in as a student. So you can still use that application for admission, though.
Great, thank you. Just a few questions about test scores, specifically how late students can submit their test scores if they would like to do that.
Yeah, do you want to grab that one, Alexa, and then I'll add?
Absolutely. So we will accept, the latest test score we'll accept are the ones taken in December. So I don't know the exact dates of the SAT and ACT, but there are testing dates in December that we will accept, which is why we have that deadline of December 28th. So you should have those scores back to you to decide whether you want us to use them or not. So October is good, November is great. December, we will still take. Anything after December, we will not use in the admission process.
And I would just add to that you could, when you take that test in December, even though you won't have seen what your scores are, you can say, yes, send them to Gonzaga. And then when you see your scores, you can then contact us and say, use them or don't use them. So you can decide after you've seen your scores so that you can feel like you have used all of the pieces of your application that will best represent you and your potential as a student.
Great. Let's see, could one of you talk, I'm gonna say Carrie's because Carrie works with Washington students. Alex, I know you don't. We have a few Running Start students with us tonight and just kind of wanting to know what classes they can expect to be covered, especially if they're graduating with an associate's degree. If you want to talk about that, Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I could ask Becky or Priya, would you look that page up so we can pop that into the chat too? But we do have a lot of students who will come in with some college credit. So not just our Washington students, but many of our students. For our students who are in Washington and attending the community colleges, we do have what's called an articulation agreement. If you have an AA, you can come in with junior standing, and we have kind of a set of courses that would cover. There are some classes in our core curriculum that would still leave out. All of our students take 2 religious studies classes. That ends up covering one of those courses. There's going to be one left under the Catholic and Christian traditions heading that would still be taken. Depending on what math level you've taken, that might be covered or might not be covered by the AA. But that link is a really good one that Becky's going to put in the chat, or if you already did, that can help you kind of see what courses are covered, which ones are left. And then if there are courses that you've taken outside of an AA, we would look at individual classes. What what was the content of this class, and is it equivalent to this class over here that we offer, so that we can offer you credit for that. So I hope that that kind of helped answer that question on Running Start, as well as a little bit with, we have a lot of students bringing in some credit. You're a first year student with credit, so you're following all of those first year deadlines, not transfer deadlines, first year deadlines, like the December 1st deadline, or the November 30th if you're applying Act 6.
Thank you. I will say we're getting a lot more questions now. There are a lot of questions just generally like, can you talk about business? How competitive is this? For things like that, I would really encourage you to maybe sign up for a virtual information session. Tonight is really talking about your application, and we just simply don't have time to kind of talk about all of our programs, but we're happy to do that, and that's why we offer that program. But I did just see a question come in, and I've seen a few kind of along the same lines when we're talking about direct admission into nursing and engineering. For students who maybe their school doesn't offer calculus, or maybe they only offer 3 years of math and science, can you talk a little bit about how that would maybe affect a student's application?
Sure. Do you want to start, Alexa? Do you want me to?
I feel like you would probably answer
Okay.
this question a lot better. See, I can't even say that sentence right. A lot better than I would.
No, you're fine. So absolutely, we will have students who have not had calculus that we will admit into the engineering program. What we're going to look at is we're going to try to get a sense of what's offered at your school. Sometimes we see that in a school profile. Sometimes we reach out to counselors and get that information. But you can actually do us a big favor by listing that in the Common Application. There's a section of just kind of additional information. That's a great place to say, my school, they don't offer calculus, or they only offer one section, and everybody wants to get into it, so I wasn't able to get into it. So you're able to just kind of let us know a little bit more about the curriculum you have, or what you've chosen. Then what we'll do though is we'll look at, well, what is your math history? How have you done in your math courses? Are you progressively taking more and more challenging classes? Are you doing well in those courses? So we will just look at kind of what you have been able to do, but we most definitely have students in our engineering program that you have to be calculus ready. So you'll take a math placement exam, and we want that exam then to be able to say, yes, you're ready to be placed into that first calculus class, and that you don't need some additional math before that. But you'll take that math placement exam before you're signed up for classes, essentially. Did I miss anything, Alexa? Anything you want to add?
Oh, I think you got it all.
Okay, great.
Cool.
And let me add physics in there too, because sometimes schools aren't able to offer physics. And so that's the same thing. Like, we like to see physics, but you can also explain to us if you weren't able to take it. Some schools offer physics only in 9th grade, or some students may have taken other science courses in those other years, but you only got your physics in your 9th grade. That's fine. We're looking at it sometime over those 4 years as a preference, and again, it's not a complete no if you don't have it.
Thanks. We have a few questions that are just very simple answers, so I'll try to go through these. So when do you learn about admission decisions? Late February, by March 1st at the latest. Is there priority given to admissions the sooner you submit? No, we do not do rolling admissions. So we will get everyone's applications, read them all at once, send all our decisions at the same time. And there was a question in here. Oh, if students submit an SAT or an ACT score, can they negatively affect their application?
So I'll at least start with this one. There is sometimes, I have heard some people say out there, oh, well, it's better to at least just have some test score than no test score at all. And that is actually not true anymore in many of our schools that are test optional, like the way that we do it. Because if you are a strong student, if you have solid GPA, but you have a really low test score, that is not going to be beneficial to submit that. So we would recommend that you take a look at, like, where are my biggest strengths within the different things that I need to turn in for my application. And you're welcome to reach out to us as admission counselors, and we can talk over those individual situations and kind of help advise you or strategize. on that. But there is a point where if your scores are not as strong as your GPA and your curriculum, then that is not going to be beneficial. And part of this too is about merit scholarships. So when we look at your admission application, we are also considering you for merit scholarships. Those currently range from $14,000 per year and they go up to $25,000 per year. And they're guaranteed for all 4 years. And are evaluating both for admission, then also it also includes us looking at you for those merit scholarship levels too. So sometimes it can make a difference in merit scholarship if you would have just been stronger just submitting the academics. So I hope that that helps.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'll also just add that you can definitely reach out to your counselor. Maybe you have a score and you're like, hey, should I send this? Should I not? We're happy to talk through that with you. Carrie, could you expand a bit on the part of the application talking about COVID hardships? I know I was at a fair earlier this week and I also had this question, do students have to fill it out? What kind of things should they say if they want to? Just a little bit more context.
Yeah, Carrie, if you don't mind, I can take this one. You've just been doing a lot of talking, so maybe you need a little bit of a break. But yeah, so with the COVID hardships section of the common application, that is purely optional. You do not have to use that section at all, but just know that it is available to you. Some examples of information that would be helpful, right, is if maybe your school went pass fail in your gosh, I guess it would be like sophomore or junior year for everyone. And that was really hard for you, right? Or sometimes there are things happening at home, whether that be through family members or loss of income or anything that was going on as a result of this pandemic that you feel would be important for us to know as we review your transcripts or your essay or your letters of recommendation, then please feel free to share that information with us. However, you do not have to.
Right, and if you don't have anything to say in that spot, don't say anything. That's perfectly fine to leave those blank. Those really are, if there's something of value that and some nuance that we need to know, then that's a good place to put it.
Question about when we talk about super scores, is that something the students have to put in their application or do they send things separately? Basically, what do we mean when we're saying we look at super score?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with this since I was talking about super scoring. If you send us any or all of your scores, we will just determine which between, let's say you've taken both the SAT and the ACT, which of those is the higher score between those. And then within that score, within each of those areas, we determine if you've taken the SAT twice, maybe your math score was higher the first time, maybe your evidence-based reading and writing score was higher the second time, we put those two high scores together. So that way, that's what we call a super score. And if it's a higher equivalent than the ACT, then that's what we're going to use. If your ACT score is higher, we would then take a look at all 4 of those subsections and we add those together, divide by 4 of each of those higher subsections, and then divide by 4, and then that's your new super score ACT. So we're always trying to give you the benefit of the doubt and give you the highest score overall, and you don't have to know what that is. So that's why we say just feel free to send them all to us and we will figure that out.
Thanks. We had a question, I think this is referring to like the Gonzaga supplemental short answer question, but a student was asking, do we submit the Common App first, then follow up for the Gonzaga app questions? Do we wait to receive instructions? So just kind of clarification of where that Gonzaga specific question is.
Yeah, so that is on the Gonzaga questions page of the common application. So there's not anything separate. You will not find this application for that on our website. It's through the common app. So as you are adding schools that you're applying to on the common application, when it's time to work on the Gonzaga one, that will be available to you there. So you'll submit the Gonzaga question page as well as the other information on your common app all at the same time. Carrie, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, just only that you won't be able to submit your Gonzaga application until you've submitted that. So you don't get the little green check mark until you've actually submitted that part of the Gonzaga questions page.
Are students able to submit an extra letter of recommendation from someone outside of school if they would like to?
Yes, absolutely. So you are allowed to submit as many letters of recommendation as you'd like. I'd like to put an asterisk around that, right? We want to know you fully, right? So if you feel there is a community member or a coach that would really speak to who you are and your talents and abilities outside of the classroom that you feel is of value, please feel free to send those along. But at the same time, as folks who read a lot of applications, and I hope I'm not speaking for my colleagues, 10, I think, would be a lot, right? Anywhere between the range of 3, maybe 5 would be a good number, but at least the teacher recommendation. I know there were some questions about requiring a counselor recommendation. We do not require a counselor recommendation, but your counselors are absolutely free to send those. Same with any community members or coaches that you feel would add to your application.
Right, and I'll just piggyback on Alexa's comment there, that if we have an application that has like 7 or 10 recommendation letters, it's pretty hard to learn something new from each of those new letters. So what you should be using kind of as your marker is, will this person, do they know me in a different way than the other people who have written my letter of recommendation? Because we really do only require, and the vast majority of students will only submit one teacher letter of recommendation, and that is not considered a bad thing. But sometimes people say, but I really want my debate coach to submit my recommendation too, or I'm applying for nursing, so I really want someone who observed me in my volunteer position to also submit a letter of recommendation, because they know that student in a different way.
We've had a few students that I believe are running STAR students based on the question, taking classes at community colleges. When we're talking about, nurses and engineers needing 4 years of math and science, some students have been asking if they're taking a math or science for a semester, does that count as their full year?
That is a great question. And yes, if you are taking a semester in college, that counts as a year in high school. If you are taking a quarter in college, that counts as a year in high school. So you are getting a lot of content in that smaller amount of time, but those are equivalents. So if you have, say, Calc 1, 2, and 3 in 3 different quarters, that's like having 3 years of high school.
Awesome. Okay, another couple, just like very simple yes, no. Does Gonzaga mandate the COVID vaccination to attend school on campus? Yes, we do, except for medical and religious exemptions. Is it required for freshmen to live on campus? Yes. What happens to GPA if the GPA changes between when they submitted their application to when we're making a decision?
Do you want to start that one, Alexa, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so we can look at first semester senior year grades. So it's always really important to continue to work hard throughout senior year, not just for admission, but also if you are admitted and choose to enroll at Gonzaga, you're going to be challenged with some really tough coursework. Not that there's not a lot of support in that, but it's important to continue pushing and challenging yourself so that you're ready to enter Gonzaga in the fall. If we do notice some concerns that we will have with some dips in your grades, it's always really important to be proactive and to communicate that with your admission counselors, right? So just making sure that you are keeping us in the loop and aware of what's going on so that we can work better with you to make sure that the best outcomes are possible. Carrie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that if you are struggling in a class or something and you want to reach out to one of us and let us know that. If you have questions about, like, you already have a huge schedule and you need to know, like, can I balance better? I need to balance my life better. Is it okay if I have 5 classes instead of 6 classes? You can reach out to us and we can have that conversation. And usually we say, oh, please, we want you to be well balanced, to sleep, as well as to be able to feel good about the work that you are doing in school and as you prepare to come to college. We don't want you to be completely burned out when you get here. We also do take a look. We do get grades at the very end and we do get final transcripts. So this is very, very, very rare, but we hold the right to rescind a student's application if their grades are just really going down. And that typically if that happens, we communicate with students first. We usually say, hey, we're noticing something here. We want to make sure that if you come, that you are availing yourselves of all the resources we have, and that you know that this is a strong academic school and we want you to do well. And then if we do have to rescind admission for a student, we're saying we think you might need a little bit more time or a little bit more preparation before joining the community. So we're really trying to make sure that students are not set up to fail as they're coming in as first year students. But Alexa mentioned that we can get those first semester set of grades, and sometimes that's a really helpful thing. If you, let's say your grade trend is going like this, but it kind of started out pretty low, but it's getting better. So maybe this semester's worth of grades might really help your GPA, then we highly recommend sending those in. Even though our deadline for applications is December 1, we keep taking information after that. So new test scores, new grades, anything that might help your application, we're happy to keep taking up to the point where we're making decisions.
Great, thanks. Another couple just yes, no answers. There's only one supplemental for the Common App for Gonzaga, right? Yes, you're correct. Even though an associate's degree will make me a junior standing, will I still have to live on campus the first year? Yes, you still have to live on campus for the first 2 years, unless you are living in Spokane with family, you are over the age of 21, or you are married. And let's see, we had a few questions kind of about, because engineering is direct admission, and you briefly touched on pre-engineering. Can you talk a little bit about like what pre-engineering actually means for students? And if a student is not admitted to engineering, can they still become an engineering major at Gonzaga, or kind of what those different paths are?
Yeah, so I can kind of start, Carrie, and then if you want to just jump in and fill in any gaps. So what pre-engineering means really is that you just need maybe an additional math, an additional science, or maybe both courses before you fully enter the engineering program. However, there are some ways that you can not sidestep it, but there's additional information that can come after the admission decision to help you get started on that engineering track in that first year. So all of our students, particularly in engineering, have to do an ALEKS placement exam over the summer before beginning their first year at Gonzaga. Depending on where you place in that exam, you may be testing at a high level that proves proficiency in math that allows you to just enter the engineering program and start those first classes in your first semester. So that pre-engineering does not mean that you are not into the engineering program. It just means that you're going to take some other math or science courses before you enter what is on the course progression for engineering. So for example, that ALEKS placement exam can really help that. Also, if students take courses the summer before entering Gonzaga, like at a community college, that would then give you that credit to test you into that higher level math for engineers. That's another way to get started in that engineering program. Carrie, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that for those sometimes students who have been accepted into pre-engineering over the summer, they kind of think, oh, you know what, actually, maybe I'm going to go this direction instead. And that's perfectly fine too. You are set up to take those classes, like Alexa said, at whatever level you test at for the ALEKS exam, and then enter engineering. Or you have been admitted to the university, so you can do anything else other than nursing as well. So those are other options. And then we've had just a few students who haven't declared engineering, but they've started out in something else. And while they were current Gonzaga students, they have worked and taken math and science classes enough to show that, yes, they can move into engineering. So engineering has sort of a couple of different ways to enter it. But the fastest way, the easiest way is to declare it on the application so that we can try to consider you for it directly.
Great. Kind of in that same vein, a student asked, if I'm not admitted to the nursing program, is it possible to switch majors such as business as a freshman applicant?
One of the things that's really helpful on for a student who's interested in nursing, but also something else, is to list that as a second major on your application. As I mentioned, our nursing program is quite small, and we're just unable to admit every student who would do well in our nursing program. But sometimes we are able to communicate with those students who indicate a second interest and ask if they would like us to consider them for that major instead. So sometimes we're able to have that conversation if we feel that that student is prepared in other ways and may be interested in another major.
It is important, though, that if you do have interest in nursing, to apply into the nursing program, because that is the only way of transferring into it. I'm sorry, you cannot transfer into it. The only way is to apply as a senior in high school. So if you have any interest in nursing, I highly recommend reaching out to your admission counselor to discuss more about that program, but also to make sure you're applying into it, because if you put business as your primary and then nursing as your secondary, you are not applying into the nursing program, and there is no way to make that change happen after December 1.
Yeah, that is a great point, Alexa. You absolutely do need to list nursing as that first major.
Perfect. Okay, we have 11 questions left. I'm just going to go through them and see if we can just kind of rapid fire answer them.
Okay.
Some of these are not entirely the context that we're covering in this webinar, so I will just try to give you a very general answer, but highly encourage you to visit or come to one of our virtual information sessions. Okay, how will we get the links that you shared in the chat if we watch the recorded version again? I actually don't believe you're able to see the chat in the recording, so if there are links that you're wanting, I would highly recommend copying and pasting them elsewhere, because I do not believe you're able to see that in the recording. How would we go about scheduling an interview? We did share the link earlier. You can just go to gonzaga.edu/visit. There's virtual options on there. It's a virtual meeting with an admission counselor. You can also email your counselor if that's easier for you. Does having a Gonzaga parent benefit anything else besides clearing the application fee waiver? We do have an alumni scholarship that students can apply for if they are a child or a sibling or a grandchild, I believe, of a Gonzaga alum. But from an application standpoint, it's just the fee waiver that the parent is really helping out with. How religious is Gonzaga? Again, this is kind of a loaded question, but we require 2 religion classes as part of our core curriculum, one in the Christian or Catholic tradition, one is a world religion. We have 38 different faiths represented on our campus. You do not have to be Catholic to come to Gonzaga. I am personally not Catholic, and I am a Gonzaga alum. We don't have like mass requirements or anything like that. If I have math/English college credits, will I still have to take the entrance exam? Carrie, Alexa, do either of you know that? I'm not entirely sure about that.
So if your major requires a particular math or a particular language as a part of your degree, then yes, you have to take that exam. If your major doesn't require a particular mathematics degree, or your major isn't in the College of Arts and Sciences where you would be required to be at a certain level in a language by the time that you graduate, then you wouldn't have to take the exam. So the exam's really based off of major.
I was never able to find a testing site. Would this be something to speak to an admission counselor about? If you would like to, again, we are test optional, so you really don't need to explain why you didn't send in a test score, but if you'd like to talk about it, please feel free to talk to us about that. Are you able to talk a little bit about your study abroad programs? Again, go to virtual information session, but we have 60 programs throughout the world. We own a second campus in Florence, Italy. 63% of our students study abroad. Highly, highly encourage it for all of our students. We are global learners and citizens. Does Gonzaga do the Yellow Ribbon program? I think, Carrie, you probably know more about this.
We do. We do participate in the Yellow Ribbon program. We have a Veterans and Benefits Coordinator, as well as several pages on our website that are for both students who are veterans, as well as those who are connected to veterans, might be dependents. As well. So yes, we do participate in the Yellow Ribbon program, and we have great people to contact. And then we have a whole our transfer of veterans and returning adults office on campus that helps support our student veterans and dependents of veterans as well.
Awesome, thanks. When is the latest you can decide on your major while attending Gonzaga? Technically second semester of sophomore year, with the exception of nursing and engineering. I will say though that the sooner you can figure it out. Some programs, I was a business major. If students didn't decide to do business until second semester of sophomore year, they definitely would have had some catching up to do. But your advisor at Gonzaga is a great resource for that. What are the average ACT scores for nursing applicants? I don't think we have an exact number. Last year, the average mid 50% for ACT for all of our students was 28 to 32. Again, those scores are skewed because we were test optional last year. So students who sent in test scores tended to have higher test scores. Nursing applicants or admits do tend to be on the higher end of those ranges. Carrie, anything you want to add to that, or Alexa?
Yeah, I would say that they were right in that same middle 50 for nursing. The GPAs tended to be just a little bit higher. Like an average GPA for a nursing applicant might be closer to a 3.8, whereas the average overall was about a 3.7.
All right, folks, we're on our last question. And I will admit I don't entirely understand this question, so I will answer it in the way I'm interpreting it. But if you're the one who asked this question, you want to clarify, please feel free. The question was, how does one challenge classes? I think that's coming from when we were talking about taking challenging courses. And it's kind of just a terminology that we use when talking about honors, AP, IB, running start, things like that. Does anyone else interpret that any other way or want to add anything to that?
There's a practice at some universities where if you feel like you know the content of this class, you go to that professor and you say, can I challenge your course? Can you give me a test? And I will see if I can, pass that test and then move on to the next level. And we don't really have that with really the vast majority. There are a couple of like AP areas where if you've taken the AP test, you might be able to contact, say, that physics department and ask if you could take a test to see if you can move to that next level. But it really doesn't happen in really any of our subject areas where that's the case. And that's what that ALEX placement exam is about too, though, is placing you in the right class. So we don't offer things like CLEP tests or that's another way that some universities allow students to challenge and get out of a particular class. But we would just look at college credit that you might already have and then give equivalents for that.
I will also just point out before we sign off, there is a question in the chat that we might have missed. So if anyone does have lingering questions, please use the Q&A. But this is asking if we provide any information on the scholarships that students would receive before they submit their application if they have their GPA and test scores. The answer is no. One of the great things about a holistic review is we use that same process, not just for admission, but for those academic merit scholarships. So without seeing your essay or your activities list or hearing from your letters of recommendation, we cannot give you an exact calculated academic merit scholarship that you would receive. I can tell you that this year those range from $14,000 to $25,000 per year. You will be somewhere within that range. But I also encourage you then to join us on October 13th, where we're really going to do a deep dive into the academic and additional scholarships we have, as well as the overall financial aid process. And that's going to be a really great resource to learn about how the different types of scholarships that you can receive and that Gonzaga offers.
Thanks for catching up. I definitely saw it and mentally answered it and didn't actually answer it out loud in the chat. So good looking out.
Perfect. And if anybody had any additional questions that we didn't get to, please do feel free to reach out to us. Maybe some of you can type in the chat a few of our email addresses so that people can get those as well. But it's been a real pleasure being with you this evening. We appreciate your time, all your questions. We really hope this conversation has been helpful. Please do join us again for the webinars that Alexa mentioned earlier. Also for our virtual preview day, which is coming up on October 2nd. That's from 11 to 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Or we have an in-person preview day coming up on October 8th. So we have a number of in-person as well as virtual information sessions, interviews, student panels, guided virtual tours, live virtual tours. Please do sign up to join us by visiting our Visit and our Virtual Visit Gonzaga websites. We wish you the very, very best with your college processes, and we hope that you'll let us know when we can help. Thank you so much for your attendance today and for your interest in being a ZAG. So take care, everyone.